And I, for one, am looking forward to campaigning later in the year on the choices that the budget policy statement provides.
Well done. Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Grant, Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, I have a short phrase to respond to that speech from Chris Bishop. Bring back David Bennett. because at least David Bennett would have tried to mount some kind of proactive support for the budget policy statement. But instead we had a range of Mr Bishop's memories from 2011 and 2014 where he managed to miss out a couple of them. In fact, I suspect he might have been responsible for the following quote from Economic Development Minister Stephen Joyce, who reacted to a statement from the Retirement Commissioner saying that the nation's superannuation system was affordable and no changes needed to be made. That's what Chris Bishop wrote for Stephen Joyce. So if we're getting into the idea of who might have moved their position, Mr Bishop, the House is a very glass one. Mr Speaker, when we look at the high-level numbers and indicators that are in the budget policy statement, it would be easy to say the New Zealand economy is doing absolutely fine at that high level. And I'm reminded, Mr Speaker, of what I did when I was a young university student and I managed to earn myself a little bit of money and I was very excited to buy a car. I wanted to buy my first car. And I went and bought a car from a very reputable used car sales yard, and it was painted red. And that was the most important thing to me even then, Mr Speaker, was that the car was painted red. It was in fact a Nissan station wagon, Mr Farfoy, and it looked fantastic. It looked brilliant. And I drove it home from the used car yard, and I drove along and it was going fine, and then one or two rattles started to emerge, Mr Speaker. And so when I got back home, I lifted up the bonnet and then I saw the real story. And that's what's happening with the New Zealand economy, Mr Speaker. If we look under the bonnet, it's not quite so attractive, is it, Mr McIndoe? Because if we look under the bonnet, there's still 140,000 New Zealanders unemployed. If we look under the bonnet, there's 90,000 15 to 24-year-olds, not in education, not in employment, and not in training. And unlike the Prime Minister, we don't think they're drug-addled, hopeless people. We think they're New Zealand's future who deserve some support and some investment. But that is the statistic that is sitting in front of the National Party. Long-term unemployment has nearly tripled to 44,000 under this government. And remember this, Mr Speaker, every time the government gets up to tell us something about unemployment statistics, remember this: in every region of New Zealand, the unemployment rate is higher than it was when National came into office. They declared the global financial crisis over in 2012. Where's the benefits there? Under the bonnet of this economy, we have long-term problems going unaddressed. And New Zealanders who look at those high-level statistics and wonder, where's the benefit for me? Wage and salary earners who average ordinary time wages are falling. 45% of Kiwis didn't even get a pay rise last year. More than two-thirds of New Zealanders got a pay rise of less than 2%. At the same time, Mr Speaker, their housing costs were spiralling, on average an increase of 11%. And Stephen Joyce admitted in this House just a couple of weeks ago that the net effect of those low wage increases and those spiralling housing costs has been, for the average household last year, they were $1 a day better off. $1 a day. That's the benefit of the so-called growing economy. That's what ordinary New Zealanders are experiencing, and that is why they're questioning whether or not these high-level statistics actually mean anything. Yes, GDP growth is at 3%. Real GDP per capita is less than 1%. It's population growth that's driving GDP growth. We're not seeing the improvements in productivity that Bill English and Stephen Joyce like to talk about. What we're seeing is New Zealanders working more and more hours and not getting ahead. That's what's happening in the real economy that the National Party doesn't want to talk about. So, Mr Speaker, where does that leave us as a country looking at this budget policy statement? We should be seeing in this budget policy statement some kind of vision for growing the wealth of all New Zealanders, some kind of sense of shared prosperity. Because there is no point in an economy that delivers growth rates of over 3% if more than 5% of New Zealanders are unemployed. There's no point in growth rates of over 3% if people are living in cars and garages and 41,000 New Zealanders are homeless. Mr. Speaker, the economy is not an end in itself. It's the means to creating the kind of society that all New Zealanders can enjoy the benefits of, and that's what this budget should be focusing on. It's a budget that should be focusing on how we grow decent work opportunities all around New Zealand. And I was really pleased when Andrew Little went to both Dunedin and Gisborne in the recess that we just had and came up with practical ideas to create jobs in those areas. A centre of digital excellence in Dunedin and another wood processing plant in Gisborne. That's what will grow decent jobs. That's what will spread the benefits of a growing economy around the population. Practical partnerships from an active government in the regions of New Zealand growing those decent work opportunities. And Mr. Speaker, in Dunedin, my old hometown, we look now, with the Cadbury's factory closing, with Hillside having closed, at cities and regions that have been left behind by this government. And we can do practical things as a government about that. A procurement policy that actually gives New Zealand firms a fair go at bidding for contracts. We have not seen that from this government, and places like Hillside have lost out. We can do better than that, and the Labour Party will make sure that we do. And Mr. Speaker, we need to look at the drivers of productivity. We need to get more capital to our small businesses to allow them to grow and develop. It's hard work out there running a small business in New Zealand at the moment, and the government can do all the road shows it likes with Jackie Dean in charge, but in reality what those firms want is some support to actually be able to grow themselves. We also need to invest in skills and training. This is the most important thing we can do for the future of New Zealand. Not write off a whole cohort of young people, but actually do active programs like Ready to Work that Andrew Little announced at the Labour Party conference, like revamping our careers advice and guidance service so every single school leaver has a plan about what they will be doing. Dole for apprenticeship, where we take that money paid in the dole to 18 and 19-year-olds and convert it into a subsidy for apprenticeship. Practical policies that are about giving young New Zealanders the skills that they need. Relying on anecdote, relying on saying that everyone who comes into a business is failing a drug test and that's the problem, is absolute rubbish, and it's defeatist nonsense from the Prime Minister, who doesn't want to face up to the fact that after 9 years in government he has left 90,000 15 to 24-year-olds outside of any kind of training or work. That is the kind of issue that has to be addressed head-on, and it's certainly what the Labour government will do after the next election. Mr. Speaker, then we start to look at the issue of housing. And this remains one of the most critical things. When you take a look at the budget policy statement, once again, the government has failed to tackle the housing crisis, failed to tackle the fundamental issue that gives New Zealanders security, owning your own home, or at the very least having some security of tenure in your rental property. But that is the issue that time and again, budget after budget, the government has thrown its hands up and said it's somebody else's responsibility. Well, that has to change. And that's why the Labour Party has proposed a suite of measures, from the Kiwi Build program of building 100,000 affordable homes over 10 years, through to a proper social housing agency in Housing New Zealand, responsible for actually creating security for people who aren't able to house themselves, through to addressing homelessness. All of those issues have to be addressed because they are core economic issues, Mr. Speaker. If we don't get housing right, if people don't feel secure, then they will not be able to get ahead. What this budget policy statement reveals, Mr. Speaker, is a series of deficits underneath the surplus. An infrastructure deficit. We have a massive shortfall in housing. We have transportation issues in Auckland that are clogging up the roads and destroying productivity in that centre. We have a deficit that this government has let rise in infrastructure, and that will need to be addressed and will be a significant priority for a future Labour government. But we've also got a massive social deficit, Mr. Speaker. The underinvestment in health, in education and in housing and in addressing child poverty has to be dealt with in a budget. This budget policy statement from the government lacks vision, lacks courage and lacks the kind of investments that will allow all New Zealanders to succeed. Under a future Labour government, we will prioritise security and opportunity for all New Zealanders.
The Honourable Amy Adams.